The town of Willow Creek had always been quiet, a place where people knew each other's names and where life moved slower than the roaring highways just outside. Jake Turner grew up here, fixing bicycles before he could even read. By the time he was 16, he had dropped out of school to work full-time in the local garage, where he discovered his true love wasn't women or money, but engines. He had the kind of patience and skill that could bring life back to a machine others had already written off as junk. People trusted him because, unlike most, he never lied. On a scorching summer afternoon, Jake was bent over an old pickup truck, grease on his forearms, sweat dripping down his temple. The sound of a sleek limousine pulling up outside the shop made him glance up. Willow Creek rarely saw such cars. This one looked like it belonged in Los Angeles, not here. The door opened, and Charles Whitmore stepped out, his suit perfectly pressed, his posture radiating wealth and power. Everyone in town knew him. The billionaire car dealer who built an empire out of steel and money. His daughter, Emma, stepped out behind him, her designer shoes crunching against the gravel. Emma Whitmore had grown up in privilege, shielded from ordinary life. Her beauty was undeniable, her dresses expensive, but her expression carried boredom and disdain. She looked around Jake's garage with thinly veiled disgust, the dust and oil-stained floor clearly offensive to her. But Charles wasn't there for pleasantries. His eyes were sharp, his voice cool and commanding when he asked, "Are you Jake Turner?" Jake wiped his hands on a rag and nodded, unsure why a man like Whitmore would ever bother with someone like him. The billionaire gestured, and a tarp was pulled back to reveal a car that made Jake's breath catch. It was a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro SS, its once brilliant red paint chipped and faded, its tires flat, its body rusted. Despite its condition, Jake could see the beauty beneath the decay. The Camaro was a classic, a beast of a machine if given a second chance. He stepped closer without realizing it, eyes running over the lines of the frame. Charles's tone softened slightly as he said, "This car belonged to my late wife. It hasn't run since she passed. I want it restored, brought back to life." Jake looked up, meeting the man's gaze, and could already tell there was more to this request than money. When Jake asked what he would be paid, Charles's lips curled into a faint, calculated smile. "If you can restore it and make it roar again, I'll give you anything you want," he said. Then he glanced at Emma, who immediately stiffened. "Even the hand of my daughter in marriage." Emma's face turned crimson. "Dad, that's insane," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "I'm not some prize to be bartered." But Charles ignored her protests, his eyes locked on Jake like a chess player, setting his final move. Jake's heart pounded. He had nothing to lose, and everything inside him craved the challenge. The moment stretched. Emma glared at him, expecting him to laugh it off, to refuse. Instead, Jake grinned slightly, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Deal," he said with calm certainty. The garage went quiet, except for the buzzing of a single overhead light. Emma gasped, shaking her head, completely outraged that this stranger would dare agree to something so outrageous. She stormed off toward the limo, muttering under her breath. But her father simply nodded in satisfaction. To him, it was a test, a way to see if Jake had the strength, patience, and integrity no other suitor ever did. As the limousine pulled away, Jake stood alone with the Camaro in his shop. His pulse still raced, but his hands tingled with excitement. This wasn't just about marrying a billionaire's daughter, nor was it simply about restoring a car. It was about proving something to himself, that he was more than just a mechanic. From a forgotten town, the Camaro gleamed under the fading sunlight, a wounded beast waiting to be reborn. Jake rolled it into the heart of his garage, determination burning in his chest. Whatever it took, he would bring this machine back to life. And maybe, just maybe, something more. The Camaro sat like a stubborn relic in Jake's garage, its silence, almost taunting him. For weeks, he poured every ounce of energy into it, cleaning, sanding, welding, and scouring junkyards for the rarest parts. His hands blistered, his nights were long, and his bank account grew thinner. Yet every morning he returned to it with unshakable determination. The challenge wasn't just mechanical anymore, it was personal. The Camaro had become a reflection of himself, broken in places, underestimated by many, but filled with potential. No one else bothered to see. Jake was determined to prove everyone wrong. At first, Emma stayed far away, furious with her father for daring to use her as a bargaining chip. She resented Jake for agreeing, assuming he was just another man dazzled by her family's wealth, but curiosity got the better of her. Slowly, she began stopping by the shop, standing near the door with crossed arms. Her sharp tongue lashed. "Out! You're wasting your time! That car's a corpse!" Jake didn't argue. He simply kept working, sweat dripping down his brow, hands steady. His silence frustrated her, but it also intrigued her. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just being himself. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's visits grew longer. She began bringing him coffee, sometimes sandwiches, under the excuse of making sure he didn't starve. Conversations slipped through the cracks of her guarded attitude. She told him about the pressure of growing up with money, how every friend she had seemed to want something from her. Jake, in turn, shared how his mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and how engines were the only place he found peace. They argued sometimes, teased often, and laughed in ways Emma hadn't in years. The walls between them slowly began to crumble. One late night, under the hum of the garage lights, Jake tightened the last bolt and leaned back, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Emma sat nearby, chewing her lip nervously. He gave her a tired smile and said, "Ready to see if she breathes again?" Emma nodded, her heart hammering. Jake turned the key. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a cough and a roar, the Camaro's engine thundered to life, shaking the floor beneath them. Emma gasped, covering her mouth in awe. The lifeless shell had been reborn, and in that moment she saw Jake in a completely different light. The next morning, Charles Whitmore returned, his eyes narrowing as he listened to the Camaro's perfect purr. For the first time, his lips curled into a smile. "You did it," he said, voice carrying both pride and surprise. He looked at Emma, then at Jake. "So, will you honor the deal?" Emma's cheeks flushed, torn between anger and something else she couldn't name. But before she could speak, Jake shook his head firmly. "I don't want marriage as a prize. If Emma ever chooses me, it'll be her choice, not yours." The room fell silent. Emma stared at him, stunned by his sincerity. Months later, when the Camaro had already become a legend around town, Emma returned to the shop on her own. This time, there was no anger in her face, no sarcasm on her lips. She climbed into the passenger seat as Jake slid behind the wheel. "Take me for a drive," she whispered. The Camaro roared down the open country road, the wind tangling her hair. For the first time, Emma felt free, unshackled from expectations. She reached for Jake's hand, squeezing it tightly. It hadn't started as love, but somewhere between broken engines and long nights, it had grown into something real, something neither of them could deny.